to be here in the role of moderator. I'm John Delury, teach at Yonsei University, and want to welcome all of you here. I've been coming to Jeju Forum for about 9 years, and I think the competition has never been more stiff between the panels to get people to come. So we're delighted to have this good group here, and we will do our best to make the most of the 90 minutes that we have of your attention. We do have a really interesting, a superb mixture of speakers to tackle the question. The question, of course, for our panel is assessing President Moon Jae-in's peace initiative, foreign views. And of course, that's a topic that is running through many of the panels, but I think that you'll find that there's a uniqueness in the diversity of the perspectives here. I will note at the forefront where we failed is it's all men. And so that's an issue in terms of diversity that we all have to work a lot harder on. But with that caveat, I'm going to just plunge us right into to the panel, and what I've asked is for the speakers to give pretty short opening statements to lay out some of their core ideas, and then as a group we will talk to one another and have a deeper conversation, and then we'll leave plenty of time to open it up to get your questions and have a group discussion in the room. So that's the approach that we're going to use. So we're going to start with my good friend Kim Tae-hwan. He's going to explain to us how he qualifies to give a foreign view of Moon Jae-in. He's definitely one of the most cosmopolitan Koreans I know, so I think he actually can step outside of a South Korean view. So, but we'll start with him, and then we'll move down the line. So, Tae-hwan, do you want to get us started with your reflections?
Okay, John, thank you very much. But before I start, I just want to make sure that I'm an authentic, genuine Korean. I don't know why I'm seated here, because given the title of Foreign Views on Moon Jae-in government's peace initiative. Anyhow, what I want to do is simply, I just want to put the Moon Jae-in administration's peace initiative in the global context. I just to start define Moon government's peace initiative as value diplomacy. Value diplomacy, which is embracing peace as impartial and neutral value in pursuing foreign policy. Why is it important? First of all, the global context. I clearly see, my observation says that sort of like an unfolding of very deleterious and exclusionary identity politics these days, based on all different sources of collective identity that include, of course, national identity, ethnicity, race, religion, sectarianism, culture, even civilizations. Okay, but then the thing is that at the state level, we clearly see the rise of nationalism on the one hand. On the other hand, we also see the rise of value diplomacy. The values, the foreign policies reflecting values, not simply rhetorical values, but values embedded in a country's national identity. Okay. See, in that global context, the so-called international liberal order. Okay, I don't personally like that expression, but anyhow, the liberalism is facing both great challenges from both within and without. From within the liberal democracies, first of all, we clearly see the obvious retrenchment of American leadership, particularly for the past 2 years under President Trump's administration. There's a leadership loophole now in the liberalist camp, if you like. And also, within the center of liberal democracies, i.e. Western Europe, we see fierce rise and advancement of the far-right nationalist populism, which uphold, not all of them, but many of them actually uphold counter-liberalist or anti-liberalist values. On the other side, we have counter-liberalism, anti-liberalism championed by Russia and China. Okay? But then the thing is that the value diplomacy, Russia and China's value diplomacy revolving around, say, anti-liberalism, anti-Americanism, anti-hegemonism. They have great, unexpectedly, surprisingly, great repercussions in some, non-Western countries, many developing countries, okay, and also the so-called BRICS countries, okay, as well as, as I just mentioned, the far-right nationalist, populist forces, the concurrences and repercussions. I.e., in other words, the value diplomacy does have some, soft power in across the globe in those countries. Yeah. So, those two sort of what I call, the phenomenon is what I call the blockization of values between liberalism and counter-liberalism. Okay. So, in that global context, I think the known great powers, particularly the value diplomacy, particularly when combined by geopolitical contentions, geopolitical aspirations of great powers, major powers, then that leads to, unfortunately, very contentious and confrontational world order, and even potentially violent world order. So that is a rough, picture of what is happening out there. Okay? In that global context of blockization of values, I think the Moon Jae-in administration's peace initiative as a value diplomacy has a potentially great meaning and implications. So what I mean value diplomacy, I define value diplomacy as a country's foreign policy to advocate, promote, and even realize specific values ingrained in national identity. Thus defined, I think the value diplomacy has some multiple dimensions. First of all is, it should reflect some, elements embedded in national identity, okay? To have some sustainability as a diplomacy, as a foreign policy. The second role, the function of value diplomacy is it serves as a country's sort of like a cognitive framework through which, the country actually constructs a social reality from material reality. The third one is value diplomacy must be, to be effective, must be accompanied by specific roles in the international society. If that is the case, and the value diplomacy of a particular country is recognized as such, then it could be a source of soft power. And also, it could be a potentially setting and norms. In that sense, the country could play the role of norm entrepreneur in the international society. So the first dimension, the Moon Jae-in government, the peace initiative obviously reflects national identity, but unfortunately, South Korea's political national identity has been divided along the ideological differences between conservatives and progressives. Okay, so I call it a divided sort of like national identity. We call it in Korean 남남 갈등. Okay, but then in the tradition of a series of progressive administrations, Moon Jae-in government's peace initiative obviously embraces peace as the utmost value to pursue in the administration's foreign policy. Okay? And cognitive framework, that obviously the North Korea and Korean unification perceived different. Say North Korea is not simply an enemy, but North Korea is perceived as a dialogic partner, coalition. Partner to be engaged with, and also Korean unification is not considered as a physical outcome, but an enduring process through which North and South Korea, the two Koreas, must coexist peacefully, and during the process, the two Koreas should restore sort of like a coherent national identity based on the idea of quote-unquote one Korea sort of thing. Okay? So the emphasis not on, that I believe, physical unification of North and South Korea, but on the enduring process, what we're going to do in that enduring process. And lastly, the roles, what kind of roles are specifically realized on the peace value, peace diplomacy. The first one is, as we all know, so-called the balanced diplomacy between the United States and China. Second one is peace building on the Korean Peninsula. We all know that, particularly advancement in North-South Korea reconciliation. The third is mediation between Washington and Pyongyang. And fourth, in the future, and hopefully, I think the future role would be to facilitate peace in Northeast Asia by involving in the building of multilateral peace and security system in the region. Okay. That I think is, I should stop here.
That's great. In interest of time, you put a lot on the table, Taewon, and you can see why Professor Kim is one of the leading theorists of diplomacy. No, but that's a great way to lay out a framework of values, because I don't think we pay enough attention to that. I might turn later the question back to you. Was everything you said, isn't that sort of a fancy way of saying that this is not about reunification? That this is a peace process, but not a reunification process. So maybe that's a challenge we can come back to. But let's continue to get more ideas out on the table. And so Sensei, one of the leading, another great theorist of international relations from Japan. And so we'll give you your starting opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, John. 여러분 안녕하십니까? 도쿄에 있는 개요대학교에게 소혜라고 합니다. 잘 부탁드립니다. 지금 한국어 열심히 공부하고 있지만 아직 잘 못해서 Is that correct? 이제부터 영어로 말하겠습니다. 죄송합니다. So don't ask me questions in Korean because that's it. Well. What I want to do basically is to compare President Moon Jae-in's so-called sunshine policy with that of President Kim Dae-jung, and see differences and similarities, and would like to see what kind of insights we can get out of this. But before doing that, I have more questions rather than presenting some answers. And my biggest question is, what is the purpose of sunshine policy? And for that matter, what was the purpose of sunshine policy for Kim Dae-jung, and the purpose of the goal of the current Moon Jae-in's initiative? Are they similar or different, or what the time frame and so forth? Maybe in the end, unification should be the end goal, I think, for both. But I think both leaders are realistic enough to know it's not going to happen anytime soon. Then laying out sort of groundworks for unification, that's maybe another common way of saying, purposes. But there are all kinds of different versions or formula, right, in the process. So what is to be achieved under the initiatives? And that's a question that I hope somebody, we could get into discussions, or somebody could give some clues. But getting back to the comparison with Mr. Kim Dae-jung, this is particularly relevant for a Japanese because soon after the inauguration of President Kim Dae-jung in February 1998, one of the first priorities was to rebuild relations with Japan. I don't know to what extent young Koreans are aware of this or know this exactly. President Kim Dae-jung and then Prime Minister of Japan, Obuchi, reached a somewhat historic sort of reconciliation. And President Kim Dae-jung's request to Obuchi was to write the words of apologies into the joint document. And prior to that, there were several occasions when Japanese leaders expressed, those words verbally. So Kim Dae-jung's request was to write it in the document. And President Kim Dae-jung's promise was, if Obuchi does that, he's not going to raise history issues during his tenure. And he kept this commitment during his tenure indeed. And so why President Kim Dae-jung did that, my interpretation is precisely because of his sunshine policy toward North Korea. I think President Kim Dae-jung was a man of vision, and I think he had a vision about the future of Korean Peninsula, and North Korea, reconciliation with North Korea was a very important, policy item. And in order to do that, I think his starting assumption was Korea's relations with surrounding countries should be stable. So that he could concentrate on, working with North Korea. And of course, Japan link has long been a missing link. And so I think Kim Dae-jung's approach to Japan was not necessarily because of bilateral things, but because of his sort of grand vision about the future of North Korea. And of course, this is as a Japanese, this is the most explicit sort of difference, from that time to today. And I see no elements or no interest, if I may, in setting relations with Japan, in a proper context in order to concentrate North Korea. But rather, what we hear from the leadership in Seoul is, if I may be frank, there is nothing that Japan can do. That sort of attitude can be seen from time to time. And of course, if you discuss bilateral relations, this is mutual. So Japan has a problem. So there is a sort of typical vicious cycle between the two administrations today. But if I may just, for the sake of this session, talk about the Korean side, that's a sharp difference. And the international politics were also somewhat different. Soon after, one thing which I wanted to say, particularly to young Korean people, I'm sure some of you love Japanese culture or food or singers and so forth. But it was President Kim Dae-jung who sort of relaxed the previously imposed ban on Japanese culture. And college students prior to that period could not see Japanese movies on TV and so forth. And there was a sort of clandestine group of students on campus, which I heard from somebody. Tewa must have experienced this, and to announce a secret show of Japanese movie, and it's not a dirty movie; it's a regular movie. In a classroom by putting up tents so that they would not be discovered by university authorities. They were doing those kind of things. Just up until just recently, and so President Kim Dae-jung was brave enough. To release the ban on Japanese culture. And so this was a bilateral thing. But again, the point is the kind of vision led him to his new approach to Japan. And then we enjoyed the heydays of Korea-Japan relations, co-hosting a World Cup in 2002. And some of my students, in fact, came to Seoul to cheer up Korean team when they moved to top 4, and and wearing red T-shirts, and so there were those good days, and so international politics. Six-party talk has yet to start, and there was KEDO created after the 1994 Korean Peninsula crisis, and so things have been moving somewhat, reasonably well along the line of President Kim Dae-jung's vision, but when President Bush, son Bush came to power, he put a cold water virtually upon President Kim Dae-jung's sunshine policy, saying, I don't trust North Korea, I don't trust Kedo, and so forth. So that started to change this sort of environment. But still, Japan was cooperating with President Kim Dae-jung, and President Koizumi visited North Korea in 2002, toward the end of President Kim Dae-jung's term. So Japan, Korea, and Korean people and officials welcomed, in fact, Koizumi and Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, kind of reconciliation, and okay, I think I've spent too much time, and today Trump is very precarious. So I look forward to hearing Spencer's views on this, and so how to go through with this is not very easy. But I think lesson from Kim Dae-jung's period is, in order for South Korea to move forward with North Korea and bear fruits, I mean, relations with external countries should be pretty much stable. And I think that's the environment in which South Korean sort of inventories about policies toward North Korea would begin to mean something. And so I'll stop here. Yeah.
Great, thank you. It's very helpful to think about what differentiates this sunshine policy from the earlier one, and the issue we can come back to that you've raised of the hierarchy. And then what are the necessities if the priority is on peace with North Korea? Maybe one thing for the next round, Professor Soya, is the possibility that Moon Jae-in has done a similar thing in the relationship with China, which maybe plays the kind of critical role with North Korea that actually Japan played back in the late 1990s, so that we could anyway think about that the principle is being used, but just not applied to Japan, maybe toward China. Speaking of China, our next panelist is Professor Jin Chang-yi. It's my first time meeting him, but I've read his stuff, and I'm a great fan. Anyone is. He's one of China's great experts on North Korea, so he can give us insights, both a Chinese and maybe to some extent North Korean view, foreign views anyway of us, and his personal views of assessing the Moon Jae-in approach so far. So, Jin Lao-sher, please.
예, 저 김광일입니다. 연변대학에서 왔고요. 여기에 외국 시각이라니까 제게 바로 중국 시각이 돼버릴 것 같아서 근심이고요. 그래, 저는 청중 여러분들이 아마 다 한국 분들이니까 제가 한국어로 하겠습니다. 예. 우리 문재인 대통령님이 이 평화 이념 정책 가치관 이런 건 이 실천에서 이미 한 2년간 충분하게 나타났다고 생각합니다. 그리고 또 이런 평화적인 이런 이념으로 이 남북 이 관계를 해결하겠다는 이런 이념 자체에 대해서는 저는 굉장히 경의를 표합니다. 물론 이 첫해 17년도에는 별로 그때는 계속 긴장한 상태고 18년도에 엄청난 이 변화를 일으켜 왔습니다. 물론 지금 들어와서는 좀 침체 상태를 보이고 있고, 그런데 여기에 우리가 이 과정을 다 평가하라 하면은 참 아주 긍정적으로 평가해야 될 부분도 있지만은 또 문제점으로 또 토론돼야 될 부분도 지금 많이 나타나고 있습니다. 2018년에 아마 우리가 상상 못할 일을 빠른 속도의 남북관계 진전 그리고 비핵화 과정의 진전이 이루어졌어요. 그런데 이게 어떻게 이루어졌냐면 물론 김정은 위원장이 자기 정책적인 전환을 이루겠다 한 측면이 하나 있겠고, 또 하나는 미국이 극한 제재, 군사 위협 이런 것들이 다 작용했을 겁니다. 그런데 그 중에 또 가장 중요한 부분은 문재인 정권, 이 진보적인 이런 정권이 들어서면서 이자 얘기들이 평화의 그런 흐름으로 해결하겠다 그런 이지, 이것이 크게 작용했다고 저는 봅니다. 그래서 이 2018년도에 우리가 보다시피 이 한반도가 완전히 우리는 그때 근심한 것이 전쟁이 안 나겠냐고 우려를 많이 했는데 그런 걸 다 벗어나고 지금 물론 침체는 됐지만은 아직 우리가 상당하게 안심할 수 있는 이런 국면을 만들었어요. 이 부분에서는 이 한국 정부 문재인 대통령의 이 리더십 이념이 크게 작용했다고 저희들은 봅니다. 물론 앞으로도 크게 작용할 거라고 생각합니다. 그런데 이런 이 평화적인 이념이라든가 뭐 가치라든가 이런 것들이 이 한반도 문제에서는 엄청난 한계가 하나 있어요. 이 한계라는 것은 이 북핵 문제라는 이 문제는 뭐 단순한 이념으로 처리할 문제도 아니고, 그래서 이 상당하게 이 북한이 핵 전략에 상당하게 제약되는 이런 측면이 있습니다. 만일 이 핵을 제거 안 한다면은 우리 여러분들 보시다시피 지금 아무것도 잘 안 되는 이런 실정입니다. 그래서 여기에서 우리가 물론 우리 문재인 대통령님이 추진하고 있는 이런 이 평화 이런 한반도 이런 계획들 이런 것들이 상당하게 이후에는 작용하겠지만 현재로서는 그 한계가 있다 이렇게 생각합니다. 여기에 우리가 보면은 지금 이 침체 상태가 어디서 왔냐 이거는 우리 원인을 좀 분석해야 합니다. 여기에 저는 첫째 원인은 어디가 있냐 하면은 우리가 과연 북한이 비핵화를 하려고 결심했냐는 것부터 우리 확인해야 합니다. 왜 이렇게 얘기하냐면 이렇습니다. 지금 많은 분들은 비핵화를 할 거다. 어떤 사람도 안 할 거라 이렇게 얘기하는데 저는 그렇게 안 생각해요. 이건 선택입니다. 선택이라는 건 어떻게 하는 겁니까? 예를 들어서 오늘 저녁 내가 비핵화를 하겠다고 결심해도 오늘 저녁 혹시 내가 꿈을 잘못 꿔도 내일 아침 바꿀 수 있어요. 이거는. 그렇기 때문에 이 북한이 비핵화를 하냐 안 하냐 이거는 완전히 이 사람들이 전략적인 여기에 달려 있습니다. 이 사람들은 어떻게 설득할 테냐. 그런데 제가 하나 트럼프 대통령한테 좀 회의적인 시각이 하나 이전에 생긴 거 있는데 제1차 북미 회담에서 어떻게 그렇게 쉽게 북핵 핵 문제라는 이걸 한반도 핵 문제를 귀결시켰는가? 이건 굉장히 저는 좀 회의적입니다. 왜 그러냐면 이렇습니다. 북핵 문제라면 우리 접근이 쉬운데 한반도 핵 문제라면 위험이 너무 커졌습니다. 심지어 한반도 핵 문제는 아마 미국 본토의 핵탄까지 다 포함돼요. 그건 충분하게 북한을 위협할 수 있으니까 다 한반도 핵 문제에 속하는 거예요. 그러면은 우리 핵심적인 이제 접근이 상당한 애로가 생길 거다. 저는 그렇게 생각합니다. 그런데 여기에서 북에서 왜서 이걸 그렇게 견제했을까? 가능하면은 이 핵을 동결하고 그냥 그래서 제재를 완화하는 쪽으로 가닥을 잡지 않았냐? 이러면은 미국하고 긍정적인 이 충돌이 나와요. 이게 북미 회담이 결렬된 주요 원인이 아니냐 이렇게 생각합니다. 그런데 또 여기에서 나타난 문제는 이 한국 정부하고 또 미국이 이 정책에서 괴리가 나타나요. 이 한국은 우리가 여러분들 잘 보시면 분석하면 저도 동감일 거라고 생각합니다만 우리가 생각해 봅시다. 작년에 한국 정부에서 북한하고 이 경제적인 협력을 하겠다, 종전선언 하겠다, 평화선언 하겠다, 김정은 위원장 방한 추진하겠다 했죠. 그런데 곰곰이 생각해 보면 여기 전제가 없어요. 혹시 이 전제가 북한이 핵 문제가 어느 만큼 진전이 왔다면 내가 이걸 추진하겠다 하는 식의 전제가 없습니다. 이 전제가 부재하기 때문에 결국은 미국이 극한 제재, 강력한 제재 이 정책하고 괴리가 발생한 거죠. 그래서 우리가 보다시피 작년에 이 한국 정부의 문재인 정부가 제기한 이런 문제들이 다 하나도 진전 못 본 겁니다. 그리고 지금 북한은 또 북한 나름대로 평화 공세를 폈는데 이 4번 북중 회담, 3번 이 남북 회담, 그리고 2번 북미 회담하고 또 1번 북러 회담을 합니다. 그런데 얻은 것 없습니다. 북한이. 여기에 나타난 문제는 이렇죠. 우리가 국제사회, 미국이든 한국이든 중국이든 어떠한 상태면은 북한이 진정 비핵화 단계에 들어섰다는 것마저 우리가 국제사회가 동일이 공통한 인식이 없습니다. 예, 그래서 여기에서 문제점들이 나타났다 이렇게 봅니다. 즉 다시 말하면은 우리가 평화적인 이런 리듬으로 이걸 추진하는 건 좋되 북핵 문제라는 이거는 진짜 넘을 수 없는 산이기 때문에 여기에는 한계가 있다 이렇게 보여지는 겁니다. 그리고 이 다음 우리가 이걸 추진한다 하면은 저는 건의가 있다면 우선 국제사회에서 공통된 인식부터 만들자. 예, 무엇이 비핵화고 무엇이 비핵화 단계고 그리고 또 국제사회에서는 어떤 식으로 북한을 정말 도와줄 거냐. 지금 우리가 암만 얘기를 해도 다 제재지 이 구체적인 건 아무것도 내놓은 거 없습니다. 예, 구체적으로 중국은 얼마 낼 거면 미국은 얼마 낼 거면 한국은 얼마 내서 저 비핵화를 하면 도와주겠냐. 아무것도 없습니다. 이때 북한이 뭘 선택할 수 있겠습니까? 내가 만일 전략가다 하면은 나는 핵을 끌어안을 수밖에 없어요. 선택이. 여기에 한계가 있다. 이렇게 생각합니다. 그래서 우리 이념적이고 뭐 이런 것도 좋지만은 실제 이런 문제들을 객관적으로 분석하고 객관적으로 접근하는 게 좋지 않겠냐 이런 생각을 합니다. 예, 감사합니다.
Great. Thank you, Professor Jeju. So now we've sort of narrowed down the focus and looking at the recent events and a diagnosis of what went right for a while and the role that Moon Jae-in played, a kind of catalytic role, and then what might have started not to go so right. And also as we think into the future, what's next for the Moon Initiative? I think that's obviously one of our big discussions as we continue. So, and also sets up well the last presentation by Spencer Kim, who's well known to many of you, a businessman, and also the founder of a wonderful NGO, the Pacific Century Institute. So Spencer will talk from, I guess, a U.S. view, his personal views, assessing the Moon Jae-in Initiative. So, Spencer.
Well, thank you, John. I have been asked to describe the situation in the United States as it affects the Korean Peninsula issue. And I will be giving my personal view, not the views of the organization that I'm affiliated with. I believe there are 5 main factors that determines the U.S. position. 1, for the efficiency, I will just say Trump rather than President Trump. Trump's continued desire to do a personal deal with Kim Jong-un. 2, the U.S. policy establishment is very, very upset at Trump challenging the post-Second World War order they carefully monitored, created, fostered for past 70-some years. And there is also nostalgia for the status quo in Korea. The America understood Korea, what they were expecting for Korea to do, and they're used to it. 3, John Bolton is definitely sabotaging any Trump deal with North Korea. 4, congressional investigation and the 2020 election in U.S. are beginning to consume and distract Trump. 5, if Trump's re-election becomes publicly doubtful, his maneuvering room with North Korea will disappear. My bottom line conclusion is that while there is a chance an interim U.S.-North Korea deal or some sort can be created. Right now, I don't see the solid foundation being built that will allow for any deal to do what the Singapore joint statement called for in order to achieve the North Korea's denuclearization, quote, to build a lasting and stable peace regime over the peninsula. I particularly was intrigued by the comments Professor Jin made. We talked about what we would want North Korea to do, but we never discussed what we may do for North Korea. So on the first point, Trump desires for the personal deal. He believes he is best at it, great deal maker. Pompeo doesn't seem to be doing anything because he's too busy with all the other the state of the United States and the world. Stephen Biegun continues to be on the job, and the U.S. Government has not reacted strongly to the recent weapons testing or weapons firing by North. So we cannot say another summit is out of the question. It may happen. Most likely it will happen. The second point, the U.S. foreign policy establishment believes the U.S.-led post-Second World War international order is something worth all the while of United States value to maintain and keep. Unfortunately, Trump has attacked that order in several regards. Bilateralism replacing multilateralism, managed trade replacing free trade, alliance should primarily serve U.S. interest, U.S. economic interest, military interest, not more diffused idea like stability over order. Raw U.S. power should be used to achieve results directly beneficial to the United States. Now, those were what we would call American exceptionalism that was carefully camouflaged under the old order building, multilateralism, and with World Bank, IMF, United Nations, all those organizations. The establishment is striking back as best as they can. When you don't honor your position, then of course you respond, and that's what they're doing. But then on the other hand, Trump was never part of the establishment, so he doesn't care. In fact, he thinks that the establishment is foolish in wasting and spending all the time. On the third point, Bolton's sabotage. Mr. Bolton, as a national security advisor, should be working very hard in Washington to think through what is required to establish a firm foundation for peace regime in Korea, including, what should we give? What's the bargaining chips we have for the North? But his long-held views that only regime change can change North Korea behavior, it is pretty apparent that Bolton sabotaged the Hanoi summit and is working to prevent any deal that takes pressure off Kim Jong-un and set him up for long rule. Perhaps very strong words on my part, I know, but by defining for Trump the big deal as being this sanction for all nukes, Bolton knew failure was certain. he knows for North Korea it is about security, not about sanction. He knew Kim could not accept that. In my view, Bolton subscribed to the pitchfork school of geopolitics, geostrategies. If sanctions, pressure, and isolation can just cause enough pain in the country, eventually the desperate and unhappy peasants will grab their pitchfork, attack the castle, and kill the king. The traditional theory of how this thing will work. But Kim Jong-un also played into Bolton's hand as well by failing to demand a done deal be in hand before they met, because he felt he could somehow sway this magic over Trump, and the deal would be done.
1 minute.
Was only 1 minute
Yeah,
left.
it goes by fast.
The fourth point is interaction with Congress. U.S. House of Representatives has opened several inquiries, and they are not quitting. That has something to do with the Russian investigation, but also other financial dealings. On the fifth and last point, there is 2020 election coming up, and probably by November of this year, something will have to be done. If Trump is interested in using the success in the Korean Peninsula to be one of his strong suit, to declare that when no other president was able to accommodate this situation, he did. However, the election doesn't look that good right now, as no one knows that only 37% of the population, registered population, says that they will vote for Trump again. But his approval rating is still very low, and 52% of registered voters says they will never vote for him. Now, there's one other factor. There are
Maybe last point here.
23 Democratic candidates, 23 of them. And voter turnout generally favors Democrats. The turnout for Obama's landslide in 2008 was 64%, but only 55% turned out for 2016. And third of black vote for Obama did not even vote for 2016. So therefore, my bottom line is, I don't see the necessary spade work being done right now in U.S. to undergird a serious dealings with North Korea, which Professor Kim pointed out earlier. It is possible Trump and Kim could meet and agree to something that will kick the can down the road, and Trump can maybe claim whatever the little he was able to get as he's doing. But I do not see the real solution prior to 2020 U.S. election. So if there is to be anything further to be done, it will have to be done by someplace else. And someplace else, you know who they may be.
Okay, thank you, Spencer. So we want to now move into the part where we interact, and you should all feel encouraged to comment on one another, to ask questions to one another as well. When I listened to the four presentations together, I think it's an overall positive assessment, especially of the role maybe last year. But there have been these vicissitudes from fire and fury and a serious fear and kind of crisis sense to all these hopes last year, and now there's a lot of frustration. I think actually our discussion manifests that frustration of sort of where to go next. So I want to start with you, Spencer. because obviously the Trump-Kim part of this is so important, and I think in particular because you're a businessman, you do have a unique understanding of Donald Trump. We forget he comes from the business world, not the political world. Well, the TV world and the business world. And so, but specifically, since our focus is Moon Jae-in, I'd like to pose this to you in almost in a business negotiation kind of context, and your study of Trump and his psychology as a businessman. He's obviously interested in this deal. He's clearly signaled he wants to get back to the table with Kim. It's not over. Hanoi was not the end of the show. What is Moon's role? When Moon talks about mediating and facilitating, does that make sense if you're a businessman like Trump? Is there a kind of broker type of role, a matchmaker role for Moon? Or do you think at the end of the day, this is kind of mano a mano and Moon's role is ultimately actually quite negligible?
Trump as a businessman is very unusual. We usually, the normal business people, try to maintain a controllable environment where we have continuous dealings with our customers. Trump seems to thrives in chaos when no one else can handle, or they want to just give it up, and he offers something that people just walk away with as the last result. That may be the difference. So from that point of view, a lot of people say Hanoi was a failure. I don't look at it that way. Hanoi is not a failure. He just simply had to delay the decision. Until when? To find out, to gain some knowledge of what his personal attorney's disclosure to the Congress, what damages will be there, how he would do damage control, and how much room he will have to maneuver, and how wisely he could delay this to the November of this year. Why November? Because if he is to take some credit for something that he did in Peninsula, he cannot have it any earlier than that because impact will be lost into the next year election. And if he did it any later, it will be all consumed in the local political fires that will be raising next year. So I think he just simply delayed. Now, in this, I ended my comment saying, if I do not see a real solution prior to 2020 U.S. election originating in the United States, if something else has to be done, then it will have to come from some other place. And I think some other place is Korea. Japan doesn't have anything to offer. China doesn't have anything to offer because they are not the party. But South Korea is. And so, but, I'm not a Korean citizen, and only as an American friend, I can say perhaps that's the only solution.
Meaning South Korea, Moon has to take a risk here to stimulate to bridge the gap.
He cannot be in between. He is, by definition. His country is threatened. His people are threatened by potential for war, and there has to be a lot more aggressive role on his part. This cannot be solved by other countries.
Seo-san, I wonder if we could bring you in here because I'm thinking about your first observation, and I think if we abstract it into a principle, you're making a point that in a leadership position and with a policy that's actually quite bold, like a sunshine policy, you have to make very hard choices. I think that's one point you're making about DJ. And then the question becomes, maybe that I want to pose to you, is there a hard choice you think Moon Jae-in needs to make now that he's not making? And it may be related to your point about the whole neighborhood has to be sort of aligned behind this if it's really going to work. Would you fault him on failing to make a hard choice, or would you, looking forward, advise him this is where he needs to make that kind of difficult decision, like the kind you talked about?
Well, my immediate answer would be no. But along the line of putting the framework, again, I may be biased as a Japanese, but his hard choice would have to do with Japan. And again, talking of Kim Dae-jung period, 2002, Koizumi visited Pyongyang and signed Pyongyang Declaration, which laid out the framework as well as the process toward eventual kind of diplomatic normalization. And it happened, I think, basically because Kim Jong-il wanted it. And why Kim Jong-il wanted it was because he was put to the corner very much, after the birth of President Bush. And so Kyoto process started to crumble, and President Bush called North Korea on top of Iran as axis to evil, and six-party talk has yet to start, and so North Korea felt very much isolated, and that was the moment when North Korea looked to Japan, as if Japan were the kind of last sort of resort of survival, and I think this structure still remains. And now there are, some rumors of, Abe, Kim Jong-un, may talk, but I don't think it's going to happen. But the situation, if there's similarity, now North Korea is finding itself in a somewhat isolated position because of failure of Hanoi, and North-South Korea relationships are in deadlock, and China is still very much, not really antagonistic, but is not willing to help North Korea immediately. So North Korea is starting to be, I think, feel isolated a little bit, and I think that's exactly why this talks or rumors about possibility of Kim Jong-un once again, reaching out to Japan. But again, as Spencer said, Hanoi talk, U.S. North Korea is not dead yet. I also think so, and there will be the next step in one way or another. And so situations are still precarious. But the point is, if there would be a Japan's role, this would be maybe at the end of the process, or in an extreme case of North Korea feeling very much isolated. And when Japan moves, then I think it's going to have a big impact.
But in that sense, as far as for Moon now, is there something he needs from Abe that he's not getting? Is there a role Japan can play that it's not? It seems like, as you say, it comes later in the process. It's almost premature.
Yeah. So if this process is moving on, then I think Japan's role will be toward the end of the process. Yeah. But if it happens, it's a matter of eventually diplomatic normalization, which involves economic, assistance toward North Korea, and the formula is still there in Pyongyang Declaration. It's already described there, and how Japan is going to help North Korea economically. And so, if normalization gets started, then the process will be to implement what has already been agreed. And so formula is already there. Negotiations are already done by his father. And I think Kim Jong-un is still regarded as valid. But it's not. So again, in this eventual picture, South Korea-Japan relations should be in good shape, because it's going to affect, the entire peninsula affairs. And I think it's high time for us to begin to talk, in those somewhat strategic terms. But again, as I hinted, on the Japanese side as well, there is no such willingness in the current Abe administration. So it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it may have to wait a political cycle.
That's why situations are still, precarious.
Yeah, it's a very good point, though, in terms of longer-term thinking. Yeah. Tae-hwan, you may want to comment already on what you've heard, but I also wanted to, thinking about your stress on values and your bigger point about the weakening of liberalism, I mean, does the Moon Peace Initiative, how does it really connect? Is it, we think of Moon as a liberal, you know, lowercase l, he's a South Korean liberal, he has a background in human rights and law and all these things. But what he wants to do is engage and deal with a very illiberal, the nicest thing you could say is illiberal state. So is that advancing liberalism, or is it actually...
No. My point is, you actually, I had not enough time to fully express my point. My point is that, I mean, I don't have personally any antipathy on liberalism. Liberalism is I'm a liberalist myself, I identify liberalist, but then the global context, what is it? If there's a bit of truth in my observation that there is a increasing blockage of the values between liberalism and counter-liberalism, okay? Particularly driven by major powers, okay? And combined with the geopolitical competition aspirations, then it's a very undesirable world order. We have no other choice but to expect the undesirable world order. Then what should be done? My point is that the current administration's peace diplomacy is actually, the point is that it's very impartial. The value of peace, okay, is not on the side of liberalism, nor on the side of counter-liberalism. It's very impartial, okay. So the countries like South Korea, known great powers, what could we possibly do in such a precarious international, conflictual international situation, particularly given the growing blockages of values? What we should do is sort of like espouse some inclusionary values like peace, coexistence, meaning that particularly we don't have to hurriedly take up positions either on the side of liberalism or counter-liberalism, okay? Rather, it might be much desirable for countries like South Korea to uphold some impartial and inclusionary values like peace and coexistence. Mm-hmm. And that's my point. But regarding your question about President Moon's role, negligible or what is it? I mean, think about it. I mean, 2017, we are almost on the verge of war, fire and fury. Okay, but before that, previously. We should know that it's a long tradition for North Korea, okay, the so-called 통미봉남, okay, communicate with the United States while blocking South Korea. That's conventional North Korean approach, okay, during which the United States rather played the role of mediator between Seoul and Pyongyang, right? But then this time. The role is reversed.
Reversed.
Yeah. The President Moon is playing the role of mediating Washington and Pyongyang. I mean, without the mediating or facilitating dialogue, whatever you call it, the role, I think. I mean, this year, I mean, the peace process, the mood, dialogue track on the Korean Peninsula would have been impossible for the past 2 years.
But is that sustainable? I mean, Kim Jong-un recently said being officious.
The question we should actually pose at the moment is not whether the Moon Jae-in's role is important or not, but the right question that should be raised at this moment is how to substantiate the role of Moon Jae-in administration. I mean, it seems to me that the Moon administration has a strong belief in the so-called a virtuous circle of North-South Korean reconciliation and friendly United States-North Korean relationship. Okay, I mean, obviously that could be quite important. But then, that's a double-edged sword. It could be turn into a vicious circle. Okay? So, right at this moment, one of the reasons why the peace process is in the stalemate is probably it turns into a virtuous circle. I mean, I'm sorry, the vicious circles. Yeah, it's rather a straitjacket, constant. I mean, when you play the role of mediator or facilitator, you should have some resources. Okay, but at the moment, I mean, the content, the Moon Jae-in has nothing. Has nothing. Okay, so I just to remind you of. I mean, it's even curious to me that we think about the sanctions relief. I mean, what is ultimate goal of North Korea and the United States? On the part of the United States, it's North Korea, FFVD, CVID, whatever. Okay. On the part of the United States, I think it's not sanctions relief. Rather, it's security guarantees of the
North Korea. Yeah.
And those two things are clearly, explicitly specified in Singapore summit, in the preamble. Okay, so that's ultimate goal. Okay, goal is already set up. But then, how to get to there? There should be, if we assume the deal as a not simply one-shot game, but a evolutionary linear process marked by many critical junctures, which meaning critical junctures refer to human particular terms of exchanges. Then, what is sanctions relief? It's incentives. To me, the United States and Korea together, combined, we have a variety of portfolio of tools to be used as incentives and disincentives, all the way starting from military actions toward economic incentives. And why don't we use the sanctions reliefs as a positive incentive? I just would like to remind you of the fact that just 1 week ahead the Hanoi summit, the President called Mr. Trump, and he said that the South Korea is determined to take up the role of opening, economically engaging with the United States. What does that mean? UN sanctions, American bilateral sanctions. Okay, it's really tough to get reduced. But then, why don't you give us some breathing space, so that we could use, in the form of North-South Korea economic collaboration, such as like connecting railroads or opening Kaesong Industrial Complex, Kumgang Mountain, very limited leverage. But that's what he actually asked.
Yeah.
On the form.
Right. But
If that is the case, then probably the United States eventually would be exercising sanctions as a positive incentive, not as an end itself.
By lifting them or creating
relief. Relief.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's take this to others and maybe start with you, Professor Jin. We haven't heard from you. You've written about and you spoke about the need for this kind of economic incentive to the DPRK. What would your advice be? To Tae-hwan's question, your advice to the Moon government, what do they need to do? Do they need to move more quickly, say, on reopening Kumgang, reopening Kaesong, do actual things? Or do you think that this current hesitation and waiting for progress on denuclearization, the more cautious approach is the better approach? Which way should the Moon Peace Initiative go, do you think?
이 문제는 참 대답하기 참 어려운 문제입니다. 그런데 제가 우선은 지금 우리 이 국제사회가 이 북핵 문제 해법에서 지금 아주 딜레마에 빠져 있어요. 이 딜레마라는 건 어떤 딜레마냐면은 그 북핵 문제를 해결 위해서는 지금 강력한 제재를 하고 있습니다. 이 제재라는 걸 우리 여기다 방점을 둔다, 미국처럼. 그러면 이 제재로 북한을 굴복시킨다 이겁니다. 그런데 제재가 본질이 뭐가 있습니까? 그건 봉쇄입니다. 봉쇄. 그런데 지금 우리 문 대통령님이 저 이념적인 성향을 우리 보면은 아마 협력, 또 이 학계에서도 이미 많이 지적됐지만은 북한이 계획 개방을 이끌어내서 좀 변화를 시켜서 경제적으로 좀 서고 뭐 이런 식으로 해서 변화를 해서 해결하자. 아마 이런 성향이 강하다면은 이 계획 개방을 유도한다는 자체가 뭐냐면 교류입니다. 이건 봉쇄하고 완전히 다른 해법이에요. 그래서 지금 이 미국이라든지 지금 한국이라든지 정책적으로 보면 정책적인 괴리가 어디서 나오냐면 이 두 개 해법에서 나타나는 겁니다. 그래서 이 두 개 합법을 또 합리한 건 다 있고 또 자기 한계가 다 있어요. 우리가 제재만 해야 된다 해서 문제를 해결 못하면 더 위험해질 수도 있는 거고. 그런데 또 우리가 뭐 개개방 유도합니다 해가지고 교류를 하고 경제 지원하는데 핵을 안 버리면 또 어떻게 하겠냐 이겁니다. 지금 우리가 지금 굉장히 모순적인 이런 입장에 있다고 봅니다. 저는 정책적인 건의를 한다면 우리가 이 미국이든 중국이든 러시아든 그리고 한국 다 정책적인 조율이 필요합니다. 우리가 어느 쪽으로 더 방점을 놓겠냐는 겁니다. 지금 여기에서 지금 모순이 생긴 겁니다. 제1차 그 북미 회담 이후에 그 미국은 강력한 제재를 계속 해대고 그런데 중국, 러시아, 이 한국은 제재를 좀 완화하자. 예? 그런데 여기에 또 나타난 문제가 뭐까지 우리가 지금 인식을 제대로 못하고 있냐면은 도대체 지금 풍계리 핵실험장 같은 거 폭파해버리면 이것이 비핵화 진짜 단계에 들어섰냐 안 들어섰냐도 우리 다 국제사회 공동한 인식이 없어요. 여기가 우리가 국제사회에서 공동하게 인식해야 한다. 이게 첫째일 겁니다. 저는 그렇게 봐요. 그래서 우리 한국 정부에 건의를 한다면 첫째는 미국하고 정책적인 조율부터 만들라. 예? 그래서 뭐 단계적인 해법이든 무슨 해법이든 일정하게 공통된 이런 인식을 도출해내고 그다음 저는 또 건의하고 저는 중국에서 그런 건의를 해봤습니다. 그때 이 육자회담을 제안하니까 북에서 육자회담 거부했어요. 그때 저는 오자회담을 주장했습니다. 왜 오자회담 주장했냐면은 북에서 안 하게 했으면 우리 다섯 집에서 하자는 겁니다. 그런데 이제를 바꿔야 합니다. 이제는 뭘 바꿔야 하냐. 이전에는 안 쓰면은 지금 북을 어떻게 제재라고 압력하고 이게 중점입니다. 그런데 오자에서는 이제는 북이 만일 핵을 포기한다면은 이 다섯 개 나라는 어떻게 하겠냐 토론해 보자는 겁니다. 구체화하자. 이것이 왜 중요하냐면은 북한한테 선택의 여지를 줍니다. 아까 제가 말씀드렸지만은 결국은 선택입니다. 그런데 북한 자체가 지금 비핵화를 하냐, 비핵화를 안 하겠냐, 여기 아직도 자기도 절로도 지금 선택을 제대로 못했을 거예요. 이때 선택할 수 있는 여건을 조성해줘야죠. 비핵화를 한다면 우리는 정말 안보부터 경제협력까지 이렇게 구체적으로 지원해주겠다. 미국이 혹시 돈이 많다면 $1,000억 주겠다. 혹은 한국은 또 당사자니까 $1,000억 내겠다는 식이 구체적인 방안이 나와야 북도 선택할 수 있다. 이런 얘기입니다. 그리고 제가 여기에서 얘기 드린다면 이 북핵 문제라는 건 이미 상당하게 어렵고 또 어려운 문제가 됐습니다. 이 핵탄을 다 만들어 놓은 저것을 핵을 버리라는 이 자체가 굉장히 어려운 일입니다. 그렇기 때문에 저 사람들이 어떤 정책 선택을 할 수 있도록 우리가 여건을 창조해서 유도를 해줘야 합니다. 그리고 명확해야 합니다. 지금 답을 명확히 못한 겁니다. 예를 들면 제가 그때 김정은 방한 문제를 저한테 문의를 해서 저는 그게 불가능할 거라고 그런데 불행하게 맞췄어요. 예? 그건 왜 그렇게 말했냐면 아니 지금 김정은이 방한하면 한국에서 뭘 줄 게 있냐는 겁니다. 유엔 결의안이 있는데 그럼 아무것도 못 가지고 가면 김정은이 성과가 뭐예요? 아무것도 없는데 이 사람 어떻게 오냐는 겁니다. 즉 다시 말하면 여기에는 우리가 구체적으로 정말 실현할 수 있는 이걸 내안 놓으면은 이후 비핵화 과정이 굉장히 어려울 거라고 저는 그렇게 봅니다. 그래서 이제는 국제사회 공조, 방안이 구체화, 그리고 실제 이 단계에 대한 공동된 인식, 이걸 다 도출해내야죠. 네. 감사합니다.
So I'm going to open it up after one more question to kick this to you, Spencer, because, Professor Jin really laid out the dilemma and the difficulty of choosing which door to open. One small piece that's coming up, Kim Jong-un's visit is not planned, but evidently Donald Trump will probably make some kind of visit to South Korea. That's going to be the next chance for President Moon to have his attention. You've talked about the problems of Trump paying attention with so much going on, but let's assume he comes to South Korea to spend some time here. Is that an opportunity? How would you advise? How do you use that little sliver of time? North Koreans will certainly be watching and listening. Can that be used in the short run to try to bump things, nudge them back on a better track?
This is beginning of June, and Trump's visit will be sometime in June. And November, that's 5 months. Now, this will give excuse to delay this further for 2-3 months. But as part of this delay, see, it's not a favor by Trump to come to this country. Actually, Korea is offering an opportunity for Trump to buy that extra time. Of course, this is my own personal opinion. So, Moon has some bargaining power, and there has been a talk about giving some humanitarian aid in terms of grain, 320,000 tons or whatever. Well, those are part of a confidence-building measure disguised as humanitarian help. And I think those options should be played out. Now, but what kind of a problem does he have? Moon Jae-in has a problem here, because the citizens of this country does not support that. So the first thing he has to do before President comes to here, he needs to build consensus among his people, including the opposition. I mean, that's the politics. And, he wants to do everything within principle, yes. But yet, he has to make a compromise, political compromise. That's what politics are. That's why they are called politics.
That may be the hard choice, or one of the hard choices that he's going to...
No other choice. No other choice.
So speaking of the citizens of South Korea, we have some of them in the room. We also have foreigners in the room. This is a chance to open up to questions from the floor. I saw a group of about a dozen students, maybe local Jeju students, who came in at one point. We'd love to hear your questions. But let's open it up. It's a little bit hard to see because we've got these floodlights in our eyes. But if you can raise a hand, we'll get a mic sent over to you. And if the students, I'll start, oh, here's one up here. If we could get a mic for the gentleman. If you could just briefly introduce yourself, and if you want to direct the question to any of the panelists in particular, please do so. Is that mic coming over there? Right over here. There we go. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Landon Hancock. I'm a professor from Kent State University. I'm currently a Fulbright Fellow up at the Kyunghee University's Graduate Institute of Peace Studies. My question, I had a lot of comments for everybody, but I'm going to keep it very short and just ask Professor Kim a question. In terms of the idea of President Moon's sort of reaching out to North Korea and the difference that Professor Soya pointed out in terms of getting Japanese help at the beginning, you talked about the creation of a sort of Korean Peninsula national identity. And I wonder if you see evidence, as I seem to be gathering from my months here in looking in newspapers, that there's actually a shift in terms of viewing, instead of viewing North Korea as the other, viewing Japan as the other. Recent cases, recent push towards the Supreme Court case with reparations, President Moon's decision to not continue with the corporation to present reparations to the comfort women, Is there a sense in which there's a policy decision on the part of President Moon to use the othering of the Japanese, particularly in this, the 100th anniversary of the March 1st uprising, as a way to bring South Korea and North Korea closer? And if that is the case, what's the danger of that approach? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That I think is a very complicated question, but then, first of all, I should say that I mentioned, I believe South Korean political national identity is divided along the differences between ideological differences between conservatives and progressives. But then there's an exception. There's a very slim commonality on which both, not all of conservatives and progressive, but many of them, two camps, they agree on, okay, which is the past history. Okay, so the past, the painful, particularly, I'm talking about the Japanese colonialism, painful past history. There's no question. There's no progressive or conservatives. Okay, so that I think is politically has been utilized again, regardless of the political dispositions of particular administrations, progressive administrations and conservative administration. Why? Because that's a very strong feel. Okay, if any, slim commonality, both parties could concur, right? So that is the expression of that sad story is what I call retrospective nationalism. Okay, and we see very unstable relationship, intermittent fluctuations of Korea-Japan relations, which is very, very negative. So first of all, we have to get over it. Okay. As we go over to North-South relations, there's another, nationalism that should be overcome, okay? Which is, I believe, it's ethno-nationalism. We are one nation, Korean nation, okay? That's a very, again, slim and few, if any, commonality shared by North Korea and South Korean people. So whenever chance is given, we're talking about one nation, which is actually founded on a myth. I think it's a myth that we are one nation, one family, sort of like a blood lineage. Okay, but then I think it's no less dangerous than retrospective nationalism. So we really, when we talk about constructing a integrated Korean, national identity, that must be something other than ethnicity, okay? But then, thank God, we have so many different sources of collective identity. Think about it. I mean, India, the huge country, is constructed on the basis of one India, the idea of one India. Okay, I think it's a good lesson, good implications for Korea. Although we are separated for over like 70 years, but then during the peaceful coexistence process, if we try to endeavor to restore Korean national identity based on the idea of one Korea, but then which is not based on simply ethnicity, but probably some issue-oriented identity, I think it's possible. And again, the peace or reconciliation sort of things could be a good source of national identity. Okay, and very inclusionary national identity. And if that is the case, then probably the Korean unification, we should, dramatically, revolutionary change our perception of North-South Korean unification. Not physical unification, but enduring, as I said, enduring long process during which we restore one single integrated national identity, but which is not primarily based on ethnicity, but something else. Some issues, some values, But that's what I'm thinking.
I think Professor Kim just showed us why he is suitable on a panel of foreign views. He has a sort of post-nationalist concept of Korean identity. Spencer wanted to add something. Please jump.
Soe-san, you talked about good old days of DJ and Obuchi. And then you ask, what's the difference between DJ and Moon Jae-in? Well, I'd like to ask the question, what's the difference between Obuchi and Abe? See, I think that's where the answers are. So even Hatayama-san was today Prime Minister in Japan. Do we think Moon Jae-in will have the similar problem? Probably not. Those are not something you and we can decide, because that's the politics, result of election, which we have no control over. I'd just like to share the question that was asked to me and Bill Perry and Don Gregg when we were in Pyongyang. Kang Sung-taek and Kim Ki-kwan sitting asked, why is America has presidents that are so different from each other? So explain, we agreed on everything with Clinton, and then the Bush 43 comes in and everything is off. And so Secretary Perry didn't know how to say or how to explain, so he was thinking, and I said, listen, that's why we have elections. So if you want to do something with us, you do it within the election cycle. So I think that question goes back. When we do all this thinking, we have to think about the reality of who our players are.
Do you want to? Yeah, of course, yeah.
I think your last point reminded us that the deep source of the problem is largely domestic and domestic politics. And even if Japanese Prime Minister would be Hatoyama today, I think still Moon Jae-in would have a problem with Japan. I think so, because largely this is a domestic issue in Korea. And of course, how domestic problems, surface themselves depends on your counterpart. So the kind of, the way how problems emerge would be different, but that doesn't mean that problem would be gone. And partly it's an issue of justice, I think, for the current South Korean leaders. And if you put the question of justice as a diplomatic issue, it's a classic way of making a relation very difficult. And also, Japan elements in South Korea, or Moon Jae-in's agenda, I think is used more or less in his revolutionary agenda, I think. Getting rid of, pro-Japan elements. It's not because of Japan, I would think. It's about Korean, identity, so to speak, to make Korea correct. And I think, I think deep impulse is revolution. I think President Moon Jae-in is trying to revolutionize Korea. And Japan elements is a core element in doing that. And it's not particularly Japan policy. I think it's a domestic policy. So if these two things are the cases, then I think the relation with Japan would not be easy necessarily, because how Japanese would perceive this is, of course, somewhat different from how President Moon Jae-in defines the nature of the problem. And if I may, maybe 2 minutes, sorry, with this, Obuchi Kim Dae-jun thing. And the process leading to Obuchi Kim Dae-jun was very interesting. I think very important, which happened in the 1990s. It started with the emergence of the so-called comfort woman issue, and the process of the 1990s between Japan and South Korea were over comfort woman issue, more or less. And during the 70s, in my view, Japanese government has dealt with it rather conscientiously and reasonably well. starting from Miyazawa, soon visiting Korea and apologizing to President Noteru at that time, and Kim Yon-sam and Hosokawa summit in Jeju, Kyonju, was a very productive one. Hosokawa came out on the nationally televised, press conference, and using the cases of changing Korean names and so forth, and apologized to the Korean people on television, and which had a deep impact upon general Korean people. And then, Murayama statement, and Asian Women's Fund, and of course Kono statement. So I think Japanese government tried so hard in the 1990s. And the point is, this was a virtual joint product between Korean government and Japanese government. There was close consultation between the two governments in the process of Japan producing these sort of official documents and apologies. And so this was a beautiful story. That's why this led to 1998 Kim Dae-jung Obuchi reconciliation. This was, in a way, the kind of finish up of the process of the 1990s. But why this is domestic politics? It's because in this kind of process of Korea-Japan joint work, totally ideologically different reactions happened in both societies. In Japan, Prime Minister Abe at that time, as a young politician, is on records in mass media and so forth, saying he didn't like this, And he even said, Kim Dae-jung Obuchi reconciliation, as to this, he said, I'm sure it's going to collapse, And so somewhat nationalist, rightist reactions to this reconciliation began to happen because of this reconciliation. Those elements who don't like it. And in Korea, totally the opposite thing happened. Liberal Korean politicians and intellectuals said, I don't like it because it's not enough. And Japan is not apologizing sincerely, so we cannot take it. And I'm sure President Moon Jae-in, as a young lawyer, was one of those people, a liberal. And so for this, in my sense, very beautiful joint product of dealing with history in the 1990s between Japan and South Korea. Rightist reactions happened in Japan, and somewhat leftist reactions happened in Japan. And these people are now at the top of the government. So structurally things would not go, smoothly. That's how I look at it in a somewhat kind of historical context and the overall structural context. And a lot to do with domestic politics. It started as domestic politics in both societies. And so that's how things are very much complicated. So Hatoyama should, of course, help in sort of alleviating the vicious cycle, but not necessarily entirely, I'm afraid, according to President Moon Jae-in and his close associates. Sort of ideological commitment to this. Yeah.
I think it shows the complexity of the Moon Peace Initiative that we've spent this much time talking about Korea-Japan relations, let alone the problem of inter-Korean relations. Is there any more, especially those students, I feel as a teacher, I want to get a student question, and we have a dwindling minute or two. Are there any other questions anyone wanted to get in from the floor? I suppose... Yeah, no? Okay. As a China expert, the last kind of question, and maybe we don't really have time to answer it, but end on a question. We talked a good bit about the role of the United States and what Moon needs to do to get Trump into the deal, to make the art of the deal happen. We talked a lot about Japan. We didn't talk as much about China, and I think that reflects a lot of the conversations, that the focus on China is maybe not as strong as it needs to be. But we also talked a lot about domestic issues, not just vis-a-vis Japan, but through Spencer and Professor Kim, in terms of the need for, both at high politics, the parties working together, as well as low politics, the public opinion, identity, that this peace initiative has to be rooted in a very strong basis within South Korean society if it's going to be sustained. So I learned a lot. I hope that you don't regret your decision to join this panel instead of the 25 other panels that are out there. And I hope you'll join me in giving a round of applause to the panelists for their insights. So thank you.